DBS community, welcome back to another video with Chris, and today we're going to be going over a profile for an updated version of the Trunks list. Now this is pre-set 20, so there definitely will be some changes in set 20 once we get there, because there are some pretty cool cards you can add to this list, and the deck does definitely get better. This is just a different variant of the list, kind of a play on the red-black variant that we had. I think we had for like one or two events essentially. So this is a leader that I enjoy playing so much, and I think it's one of the most generically good black leaders that we have. And just plays around Saiyans obviously for the effect here. So activate main, you pitch one black card in your hand, and you draw two. So it can be any black card, but you need to have 5 or more Saiyans in the warp in order to awaken early, or at 4 life, then you're a restand 1, draw 1. So you can awaken at 8 life technically, which is nice, and also not having to attack to gain advantage is very good. So that way when you go first, you're actually still gaining advantage because you're able to draw on your first turn. Now on this side, you're a attack, you draw 2 and warp a card from your hand. This card does have blocker, so when your unison is being attacked, you can restand your leader. And then activate main, for Spirit Boost 1, you tap 1 colorless energy. You send 2 black cards from your warp, black battle cards from your warp to your drop, and then you warp one of your opponent's battle cards. So you have 1-drop spot removal, which is also very helpful. This is for getting rid of tokens and things like that. And this is also something that I forget about quite a bit because it hardly comes up. It's very situational, but it is a very good, very good skill. So I figured I'd go over the main deck and as well as the Z deck, because the Z deck for this deck is a little spicy, Not too much spice, but just enough. So the first set of cards here are the 6 challenging and demon gods that you need to awaken. So 4 Gohan and 2 Goten, both of these can be played from the warp for 1. And when they are played, you get to warp up to the top 3 cards of your deck. So this allows you to get to your point to a self-awakening. So like essentially if you go first, you pitch one of these guys, draw 2, and then you play this, warp the top 3 cards of your deck. Hopefully you hit 2 or more Saiyans, and then next turn you can probably awaken. That's generally the kind of the goal here. But Gohan is a blocker, definitely the better one out of the 2. This card is just great to just play sometimes and then just pass, so way you can have maybe 1 or 2 of these blockers up, maybe even more. And then it's just always reoccurable, so it doesn't matter if it gets negged, if it gets KO'd, it gets warped, whatever, you can just replay it next turn, and you have consistent value with this. Goten is a card that I've taken in and out of the deck quite a bit, but I do like having the ability to see more of the Self-Awakener. So this card can also gain crit, which does come up sometimes. So it's a Spirit Boost activate battle. This card will gain crit for the turn. It's almost like the Overwhelm Goten from Supreme Kai. It's literally a 10k crit. It's the same concept, but this allows you to kind of aggro decks down early. You can play this out if you have your unison in play, then this is just a 10k crit, and your opponent has to either combo out of it, or they have to take the crit damage, and no one likes taking crit damage. So these are your Self-Awakeners here, and then I have 2 of the Searcher Trunks. We cut this down from 3. This search is top 5 for a 4 or less Black Saiyan, or a unison 2 cost. We took it down because we are running less of 4 or less Saiyans and more Saiyans that are 4, 5, 6, or that are like 5, 6 plus. So this card doesn't actually come up nearly as much. This is kind of like a last resort. We have the Unison, which is Supreme Kai. This has been the Unison to play in the deck. People were playing Bardock, I know, at one point. +1, you warp the top 3 cards of your deck. So essentially on turn 1, if you play one of these guys, you get 2 or 3 Saiyans in your warp. You can play this on turn 2. Hopefully hit 2 Saiyans or 1 Saiyan, whatever you need to actually awaken, and then now you're awakened at 6, 8 life with the unison on board. And then if you play a battle card from your warp, this card gains a marker, and you get the draw card. So anytime you play one of these guys after you've awoken, after you have this on board, they will draw you a card as well. So this card is also very sturdy. Being able to gain 2 markers per turn makes it so that your opponent's going to have to either really just have to black smoke this. That's really the only way of getting rid of this card. You just have to black smoke it. All right. Unison of choice is going to, not the unison of choice, the super combo of choice is going to be the Sun Gotens. So the reason why you play Sun Goten instead of Vegeta is because, again, we're going to awaken early. We don't want to go down to 4 life. And once you have 5 or more cards in your warp, this card is now active for you to be able to draw, and it's always a 10k. So in like game 3 situations when you're playing for life, or if you're just getting aggro down early, this is always a 10k combo. Yeah, and it just draws you a card. So yeah, so this is the super combo you should be playing if you're playing this deck. Now we get to some of the fun stuff here. So we are running 4 of the Dark Broly's, Unbridled Destruction. So this card here has multiple uses in this deck. For one, it counts for black in all areas. So this is actually technically a red card, but it also counts as black. So this counts as a multicolor black-red, which is very, very important for some of the cards in the deck. You can X-Evolve on top of a Dark Broly, cost 2 or 6. When it's played, if your opponent has 3 more life, this card comes in inactive mode. So if you have a Broly in rest mode and you play this on top of it, it will restand. And then your opponent has to warp a battle card from their board, hand, and or drop area. And they have to pick 2. So if they pick less than 2, they have to warp a card from their life. Or you get to choose one of their cards in their life and put it in the drop area. Can't play copies of it for the turn, and it is a 7-drop deflect. But we mainly use this as a check land because we want to be able to get some red energy down. So, but you do have the ability of playing this guy out for pretty cheap off of the Heartless Berserker Dark Broly. So this is your Overwhelm 6. You play it, it spot removes any battle card that doesn't have barrier, and it's a 30k swing. You can play this card for 2 from the warp, which does trigger your Kai effect, which is pretty cool. So you actually can draw off of it. So later on in the game, so there are sometimes like early on in the game, my opponent plays something really, really annoying. You just tap 2 and playing this, and then just remove it. Now you have a 30k body on board, so that just sticks. So they have to remove it. But again, you can overwhelm this out, swing it for 30k, and then X-Evolve with this, and then it restands. You get another 30k swing, and you get some removal from hand, drop area, all that kind of stuff. So. But again, this is not the main purpose of this card. The main purpose of it is to have this in your energy, so that way you can play something like this. So we have the Bardock Prismatic Burst. So this is a counterplay. It is a 1 red and 1 black. It's a 16k counterplay when this card is played. The battle card being played, if it's 20k or less, goes to the drop instead of being played. So this is good against floodgates. Also very good against decks that are trying to, like let's say turn 2. Like if you go against something like Sin, you have this in your hand on turn 2. As long as you have one of these charged, you can wait until your opponent plays the 4-drop guy. You tap 2 for this, it goes to the drop area. They wasted an energy, and now you have this guy on board. If you have 2 or more black multicolor cards in your energy, you can take a life and reduce the cost of this card by 1 black. So essentially making it cost 1 red. So why this is good is because, again, we awaken at a high life total. So something like Super Kamehameha is not super amazing in this deck. It's good, but it's not the most amazing thing. So if you're playing early and your opponent plays like a floodgate or something like that, you can use this to just kind of pop it and then take a life, right? It also is a Saiyan, so technically if this is in your warp, or you can also pitch this off of your leader effect early game if you're in a matchup where this is not going to be advantageous for you. You also technically can charge it if you go first and you have no other play in your hand. You can always just charge it. That way you have a black-red multicolor technically, because these counts multicolor and so do the Dark Broly's. So we got that. Now onto some other stuff here. We have our Trunks package, so 3 time regulator, 2 challenging a demon god. This is an overwhelm, draws 2, warps a card. This guy's 20k unique. If you have 10 or more cards in the warp, this card gains double strike. And you can play it for 1 if you have 3 or more energy in your leader's this leader. And you have to just spirit boost 1. So when this card's played, you take a marker off your unison. Your unison then gains a marker. You draw a card, and they have a 20k double strike swing for 1 energy. So very good. These are also searchable off of the other Trunks. These are that's kind of why you run the Trunks card. We have 2 of the new Mask Saiyan. So if once you've overwhelmed, this card becomes a 1 cost. It's a 1 cost 20k deflect. It comes into play, warps 2 battle cards for the turn until the end of your opponent's next turn. Then it gains crit for the turn. Why this card is good is that you can use this for spot removal, and then your opponent, they do not get those cards back until the end of their next turn. So you can get rid of. It's also really good against like secret rares and tokens and stuff. You can just play it, warp some stuff, and they have a 20k crit on board. So it's also a 7-drop, which means you can get it back off of Beyond All Limits, which is obviously something we're going to play in the deck. 3 Power Awaken. Yeah, I think 3's fine. I don't think you play more than 4. I mean, I don't think you would play more than 3. I don't think you need 4. You tap 2 to play it from the warp. If you have 8 or more cards in the warp, and then every time this card swings, you put 3 black battle cards back into your drop from your warp, so that way you can access your overwhelm. So it's a 20k dual attacker. When it's removed from the field, it's removed from the game instead. It's a very good card, but so 3 is probably the most you want to run with it. Sometimes you might want to even think about going down to 2. It just depends. We have our SS4 package, so we have 4 Beyond All Limits, 3 Feigned Greeting. This card you can get back literally everything we just showed except for your super combos and the other 2 drops. And you have 3 Feigned Greetings. This warps a card from your opponent's hand. We mainly run these obviously because we run the one of thwarting. But these are just also Saiyan cards as well. Beyond All Limits also obviously being like the best one. You can use this to cycle back your Gogetas, and then this is just good for applying pressure later on and also warping a card out of your opponent's hand. And these just count as fusion pieces for the Gogeta. So very, very small Gogeta package. For some defense, so we have 2 Kai. This can go up to 3 in some cases. You probably would sideboard 1. Warps anything on play, and it's a negate, so you play it for 1. If you or your opponent have 3 or more cards in the warp, which you're going to, you negate an attack and you warp a battle card. It comes back at the end of the turn with the skills negated, so you can stop 2 attacks, maybe even more. 3 of the Pan Challenging a Demon God. This card, I see it sometimes in the list. I don't see it in other ones. It's probably the most cuttable card in the list, but it is a counterattack. You play it. It does not negate the attack, but you warp a card from your hand, and then every battle card swing your opponent does for the rest of the turn, they have to warp 2 cards for their hand. So it is good in some cases. So one big thing you can do is because it's like dormant. So if you have a Gohan on board, you can pan and then block, and then every time your opponent attacks with the battle card, which right now battle cards are really big in this meta. So you can you pan, and now every attack that they do, they have to warp 2 cards from their hand. So essentially, it's probably going to force them to stop attacking unless they sequence correctly, which is swinging with their leader or their unisons first, which then kind of kills this card. I mean, they're going to swing with their battle cards first, because if they swing at the pan, like if they swing with a unison or a leader first and you pan, they're not going to want to attack anymore. So there's a few decks where this card's not very good into. You probably decide it out, but also you can play it, and then you can also combo it off later on. To use for Z energy or something. So like I said, it has its effects. To Gohan, this card is fantastic. Multiple uses. So 1, it is technically a negate. If you have 4 or less life, you can add a card to your hand, and then bottom deck a card from your hand, and then you play this card in rest mode from your warp or your drop, and it negates the attack. So technically, you can you can supreme, you can do like a supreme Kai negate if your opponent decides to. If they decide to negate this auto, then you can finalize this auto, and if they decide to counter, then you can play this, and then it will negate the attack still, so you can still kind of get around some of that stuff like cooler counter, almighty resistance, things like that. The second effect on Gohan is you can combo this, and once it's comboed, you can tap 1 black, put this card in your Z energy, and warp a battle card on board 4 or less. So it's very good. Also, this is great to either mill off of one of your Gohan and your Gotens, or you can just pitch this off of your leader, because then you want this card in the warp and the drop. You don't really want this card in your hand that much. Now we get to the end, pretty close to. We have 3 of the negates here. The Support of the Dark Empire. This is your negate for black, your token negate. We're going to run that. And then some of the one-ofs. We'll actually get to one card that's not a one-of, technically. So this is the Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, Indomitable Might. So this card replaced the Thwarting the Dark Empire card. The reason is because I don't run the True Fighting Spirit package, so I'm not running a lot of Goku and Vegetas. So this card doesn't need that, and this card costs 3 energy instead of 4. So if you have, if your leader is red or black Saiyan, you have 3 or more red or black Saiyans in your energy and or your battle area. You play this card from your hand for 3 colorless. When this card's played, you give your leader 5k until the end of your opponent's next turn. It's a 30k double strike deflect. When this card is played, your opponent warps a card from their hand, and then you neg 2 of your opponent's battle cards by 30k. So one of the interesting things about this card that I liked is with the other Gogeta, which we should know what the other Gogeta is. It's this guy. So with this guy, you have to swing to get the effect, and sometimes that's kind of a hindrance. And also, this card can just get removed a lot. This card is very good. Just in certain matchups, it's not very good. And also it costs 4 energy, and you have to have a Goku and a Vegeta in the drop. While the or in play. Now with Gogeta, you can just, you have 3 Saiyans. Maybe you have a Saiyan on board and 2 Saiyans in your energy. You can just tap 3 and play this guy. So when you play this, it warps 1 card from their hand, and then you get rid of 2 cards on board, and now you have a 30k double strike swing. That also pumps your leader by 5k. So now your leader is a 20k till the end of your opponent's next turn. So it does give you sort of like a bean too. This card is very good. I think 2 is probably the most. Anything more than 2 is probably too much because this is a 10k combo, and we don't want a lot of 10k combos in this deck. The last 2, which I already showed off one of the one drops of the one of, which was Thording, obviously. We won 1 Brainwash No More. You just gotta check your opponent. If they wanted all in, you tap 1 and you don't take a damage. And then obviously Evil Saiyan as a secret rare. Definitely the best one for the deck, since you're gonna probably mill it off the top, and now you have a card you can play from your warp. This card's cool too because it also tracks. It also hits your Supreme Kai. So when you play this from the warp, you get to draw a card and add a marker. So that's kind of cool. A secret rare that draws a card is very, very cool. So if you guys don't know what Evil Saiyan does, come into play. Your opponent has 3 or more energy. You play this, warp a card on your opponent's board, ignoring barrier. If they have more than 2 life, you look through their life, warp any card 7 or less, and then you get to play a battle card from their warp that's 7 or less. With the skills you get it for the turn or for the game. Then when your opponent plays a battle card 7 or less, you may warp one of your battle cards, including the card that you took from them, and you get to gain control over that card. And it says just gain control, so you technically can get around barrier, which is really cool. So that is the main deck. Now for the Z deck. So we have 2 surmountings. This is pretty standard stuff here for helping for Self-Awaken and just being able to cycle cards. 1 Demigra. I don't have Boo. Boo would probably replace this card because we don't want to pay 2 energy for this. I'd rather pay 2 energy for Cumber, or 2 energy for Trunks, or 2 energy for Dark Broly, but it's there just in case. 1 Son Goku because I only have 1 Pan. So Son Goku is a 15k crit, and it's an auto burst 3 if your leader is Son Goku Xeno, which we are not, so we don't have to burst. But then activate main. For every 7 black battle cards in your warp, this card gains 5k. So technically you can slam this guy down. If you have 14 plus cards, this is now a 25k plus crit swing, and that's pretty devastating to deal with for 2 energy. But again, this is just in here just for filler because I don't have another Pan, which is technically what it would be. I'd probably run 2 Pans. So the top effect is for Supreme Kai, which we don't do. Activate main. Bond 3 cards with Xeno, which is literally every battle card except for the Masked Saiyan, Evil Saiyan, and Dark Broly. I believe every other battle card we play in the deck other than Supreme Kai and then the ones I just mentioned are Xeno. So if you have Bond 3, you get to just choose any of your opponent's battle cards and warp it for 1 energy. And this is a 1-drop 15k, which I think is probably one of the best parts about this card, that it's a 1-drop 15k that you can use for spot removal once per turn. So very good card. And in the last 2 cards of the deck, we have Son Goku, Defender of Life. Now this is where running the red energy comes into effect, because we need 2 red energy to play this, and 3 Z energy. It is a 20k double strike deflect. When this card is played, place up to 1 Saiyan card from your drop under this card, and this card gains barrier for the turn. Initially, if your opponent has 4 more life, you deal 1 damage to him. So the bottom effect also is for Pan, so we don't really care about that part. But the top effect is very good. So there are times where you need a barrier card on board, and we don't have barrier stuff, so we can play this guy to burn our opponent for a life. All of our cards in our deck are basically Saiyans, and this card does not choose a particular color Saiyan, so it just says a Saiyan. You put a Saiyan underneath. Now this card gains barrier. Now you have a 20k double strike swing that you can actually just dump your hand on, and most decks just can't deal with. So that's one of the other things too, is with blue, if your opponent has energy up, outside of swinging with your leader and your Kai, you really can't hand dump on stuff, which is why I wasn't running the East Kai for double strike or Champa, because when you do mill it, it's unfortunate because now you lose a win condition. But with this always has double strike, so you can just tap 2 for this, and then you can just swing with this, hand dump on this guy. It also burns your opponent life. So you can also burn your opponent life from 4 to 3, and then this you can use from 3 to 2, and then you can swing with Goku. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with this card. But again, you just have to have the 2 red energy down for it to work. So no side deck stuff, obviously. We don't go over that stuff, but this is the Z deck here. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you guys like and subscribe as always, and thank you guys for the support. I'll see you guys in the next video.